Hi everybody, Gisele Grenier here from artplace.ca. So today I thought what I would do is create a demonstration. It's not going to be one of my under 10 demonstrations because this will take a little bit longer than that. And what I thought I would do is teach you how to do a basic stitch to bind some papers to make your own art journal. Now this is going to be, I'm going to cover just the basics on this. If you want detailed information on all the supplies, you can go to artplace.ca and I've got some videos on there. So the first thing that we're going to need our paper, a ruler, I can't even pick it up, a binding needle, some thread, some optional wax, an awl, a bone folder, a telephone book, and some scrap paper plus a pencil. Okay, now to go through this first, what we're going to do is, might as well get the hard stuff over and done with first. We need to, basically when you get your paper, I'm using Terra Skin, which is paper made from stone. There's no trees, water, or bleach used to make this. And I thought with Earth Hour coming up in a few weeks, well, would be a really, really nice project to do for one of the online event I'm hosting. So you get your Terra Skin in sheets, and it's up to you how you want to cut it, but basically you cut it into pieces and you'll have pages like that. So even think of an 8x10 sheet of paper or letter size paper. Then what you do is basically we have to fold it in half, but if you fold it in half, you know, there's no way you can get it flat by using your thumb. What I like to do is, first of all, is to, and I do a whole bunch at the same time. I will measure to find my center point, okay, and I'll make tick marks, measure twice, score once, put my ruler here, okay, then I use my bone folder, and I will make a couple of scores, and that creates an indentation. And basically, actually it'll be on this side, creates the indentation, and then you flip it over, you fold it, and then you burnish it, okay? And that will basically create a nice crease. I typically like to score on when I'm using paper, like tree-based paper, okay, because sometimes it'll crack. So you'll have your paper, score it, then flip it over to fold it, because the actual indentation creates a nice, it thins it out, and then you can fold it. With Terra Skin, you really don't have to score it because it's not made from trees, so there's nothing to crack. But it just makes the folding easier because you've already got the score line. Okay, so you fold it over and you burnish it. Okay, a folded sheet of paper is called a folio. Multiple folios nested together is called a signature. Because the Terra Skin I'm using is relatively thick, I'm only going to have 2 folios per signature. And that will allow me to have a nice clean edge over here. If you have too many folios in a signature, when you put them together, your pages will be uneven. Okay, but you can always trim it down if you want, or just leave it if you don't care. Okay, doesn't matter to me. All right, so I'm going to count. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 signatures. Now what do? We get rid of our ruler. What we need to do now is we're going to create a jig. And a jig is so we can punch holes in our signatures in a relatively even, okay, and easy fashion. And what I'm going to do is I have one made up, and then I'm going to show you how to make it. So what I did is I have a piece of Terra Skin that's exactly the same size as the signatures. Okay, and then I folded it and I punched my holes. I'll talk about that in a second. To create that, you don't even need to know math. Well, you should know math, but you don't even need to know it to do this. What we need to do the basic binding that I'm going to be showing you, which is like a running stitch, we need an exit and entrance hole, And then we need 2 holes so our thread will show on the outside of the book. So the type of binding I'm going to show you, you'll actually be able to see the stitch. It's going to be an exposed stitch, which is actually very pretty. So what we're going to do, we need a phone book for this. And we need the phone book because we're actually going to open it up, lay our signatures inside, put our jig on top, and then we'll be able to punch. And this helps everything stay centered. So first thing we're going to do, hopefully you can see this because it's on white paper. And I don't need to do this, but I might as well do it just to show you. I'm just going to score it. Okay, you don't need to measure to make a jig, not for this part. Okay, and then I'm going to fold it. And burnish it. Perfectly flat fold. Now what we got to do, so we need our exit hole, our entrance hole, and for each stitch we need 2 holes. So we have 1, 2, so we need 6. Well, first thing we're going to do, we're going to find the center. So I'm going to fold this in half to find our center. Okay, so there's our center. Let's put a little C right here. You don't need to do that. Then we're going to fold it again. I'm just going to make a little dot. Turn it over. Fold it again. All I'm doing is I'm folding the outside edge into that center crease. Make a little dot. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is in each of these folds, I'm going to take this fold and match it up with this fold. Make a little dot. I'm making even measurements. Now there are other ways of doing bookbinding. This is just the one technique I like to teach beginners and young people how to bind your own journal because it's easy. And then I'll also do the outside edge. And this template you'll be able to use for many other types of binding. Okay. There we go. So now what we have is we have our jig here with measured pieces, okay, and the holes. So this is going to be our entrance, our exit. You don't have to mark them. I'm just marking them just so you can see. And then our actual stitching, we're going to overlap these 2 here. The center we're not going to use. That's just to get our jig started. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my trusty phone book. Turn it approximately center. Oh, Amy's Walk. I really should order dinner from them. I'm hungry. Now I'm going to put my jig inside. Okay. Now I'm going to take my awl. Again, to get specific information about each individual supply, you can go to the Art Place website for other videos. So I'm going to take my awl, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch a hole, okay, in each of these little pieces. So I'm going to go right into the center, and hopefully I'm not going to get in the way. Just going to punch a little hole, little hole, little hole. Okay, I think my hands were in the way there, sorry. Little hole, little hole, little hole. If you were doing other types of stitching, I mean, you can punch a hole in this one too, but so it doesn't get confusing, I'm not going to do that, okay? And because we have all these dots, to make it cleaner for the actual demonstration, I can turn it over, okay? And what I can also do is just trim it down. I was kind of sloppy with my folding. I want to make it easy for you to see. Okay, and I'll just repunch on the other side. It just makes it easier when the needle goes through. Now, I use a curved needle when I do my bookbinding, but because they're more difficult to find, I'm just going to use a regular straight needle. Okay, so we have our jig. Okay. And I guess I can, no, I'll fold up my phone book for now. Okay, now, who has ever not had trouble threading a needle. Well, this is just embroidery floss that I'm using. Okay, it's just embroidered, and it's orange because it's a nice color to show on camera so you can see the stitching. And what I have here is I have wax. It's a little container. Now I have no flippin' idea where I got this. This is Dazzle It on it. You can use candle wax. Beeswax is actually kind of nice. I used to use linen thread until I found that the cost of linen thread, I couldn't justify it based on what I was getting. It was far too thin. The embroidery floss is nice and thick. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 threads, I think, on it. So it's nice and strong. It doesn't stretch, and I can get it in different colors. But it's not waxed. Okay, so waxing, what it does, it helps the thread, it doesn't slip. It makes it a little bit easier to actually hold together. So whether you use a candle, okay, so if you're using a candle, you can actually have your candle like this, and you could just have it go around. But all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it through here, okay, like this, and I'll just run it through. It also helps to detangle. So you can use a candle, you can use whatever, okay? But beeswax is kind of nice. And if you can find it, have it where it's not colored wax, like just plain old clear white, that type of thing. Okay. Oh, dumb me. How much thread do we need? What I like to do is I take the number of signatures, okay, and I measure approximately the length. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I have some left over. Okay, you can always, if you have too much, you can always cut it off. But if you don't have enough, I mean, there is a way of adding it, but it's a lot more work. So I'm going to take my needle. Now this is a regular straight edge needle. It's very pointy on the end. I don't like using this. I actually like using, there's tapestry needles which are dull. The curved needles is what I like to use, but they're a little bit harder to find, so I'm just going to show you with this. I just licked the end of the thread, and I wasn't going to show that on camera because it was kind of gungy. And okay, this black stuff on my finger, it's not a broken nail. I have acrylic paint. It's like, I just realized that. So I'm going to take my thread and just kind of dampen it a bit. I'm going to feed my thread almost to the very end of my fingers, and you probably won't be able to see this. I'm going to move my glasses down so I can see, and I'm going to take the needle and I'm going to put it on top of the thread. I'm not going to put the thread in the needle. I put the needle on top of the thread. And there we go. And we're just going to have a little tail hanging down like that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my signatures, okay, and I want to make sure that I have them all facing the same way. Now, these are just plain pages of Terra Skin. I will usually prepare my backgrounds with some acrylics, so that way I'm not creating any art journals. I'm not going into just a blank page. Okay, but for video purposes, because it's easier to see the thread, it's just on white paper. So what we're going to do is I want to keep my pages the same way because we're going to be punching them the same way. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a little pencil mark at the top, just so we can see. When the pages are actually painted, they're much easier to, it's much easier to see which is the top. But so just for video purposes, because it's white paper, I can make just a little tick at the top. Okay, you probably can't even see that. So I'm going to take my first signature. Okay, so I've got my 2 folios inside. I'm going to shove it right inside, making sure that it's all perfectly lined up. I used to use clamps, okay, but there's only 2 folios in there. So you're going to put your piece inside. Now hopefully I'm not going to get too much in the way. I'll turn this here. Okay, and then you're going to take your jig. Now I'm going to get the bigger jig. Okay, this is small. I'm going to get the bigger one, which is exactly the same. Okay, it's just a bigger page, bigger paper. And I'll line it up. Okay, then all you're going to do is take your awl and you're just going to punch through the two pages, the two folios, which makes up your signature. Now, hopefully I'm not going to get in the way. I think I am. Now, if you were creating, if there was a lot of folios in your signature, you would think, oh, I have to press really, really hard. Well, this is really, really thick. Okay, I have a much smaller one, but it's kind of awkward, so this is kind of nice. You don't have to go very far. You actually would be better off if your pages are perfectly even, just to punch them two at a time. So that way your hole isn't too big. Okay, just like that. Make sure it's gone through. Let's see if the camera can focus. There we go. So I'm going to fold it. I'm going to put it aside. And I'm going to repeat this for every single one. This signature feels thicker. I have a funny feeling I made this with two different weights of Terra Skin. I recycle everything. Okay, punch, punch, punch. Okay. Oops. Camera probably won't be able to focus, but so I'm gonna top, fold it, put it aside. So I'm just stacking everything. And I know now what, you figure, oh, okay, I've seen it once, seen it twice, move on. But you know what, there's some people that just kind of are visual learners. It doesn't take me any more effort just to punch these on camera, because they have to be punched anyway, so might as well put it on camera. Fold it, stack it. Now the nice thing about Terra Skin is that it's tear resistant. The really, really thin stuff will tear though, because I said this stuff is actually pretty good. But you can do this technique with regular paper, or the Terra Skin. I actually just did a demonstration on making an art journal using weekly flyers, what people call junk mail. Okay, two more. Now this one here was from a piece of recycled Terra Skin because there's a fold in here. I don't care. It's going to be covered up anyways with paint. The technique for doing the punching is the same for all the stitches that I will eventually have videos for. Okay? Just the actual stitch would be different. And this particular stitch is a very easy stitch. If you know how to fix a hole in a sock, or if you just if you know how to put a thread into a piece of cloth, you'll be able to do this binding. And it's kind of nice being able to make your own journal. Okay, and I like making my own because I create all my studies, my paint studies. When I create a piece of art, I like to do studies, okay, color studies, texture studies, technique studies for a single piece of art. And instead of now I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of canvases in my closet of these studies, because I don't throw them out, it's easier just doing them in a journal. So you can see where all the punches are. Okay, so we're all set. Now the top one is off, and I think that's because I was talking and I wasn't paying attention and I didn't line up my template. See how it's off? So I could do one of two things. I could punch another hole, I could move it to the side, then my pages will be really uneven. But what I'll do is I'll just hold it aside and I'll use this to create more templates. How's that? So now I'm only going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 signatures and 2 pages each. All right. So first thing we're going to do, you're going to make sure that you have your signatures the same way each time. So don't pick up one to do this and don't pick up another one and turn it this way. Okay, have them all facing the same way. And you're going to get your thread. Okay. Now I will definitely have more thread than necessary. So I'm going to pick up the first one. Okay, and what you want to do, see if the camera can focus, you want to put your needle in, you're going to come from the outside and you're going to go in through the first hole. Right through. And you're going to pull that through. And I like to leave, because we're going to have extra thread because I took a signature out, you know, leave a good thread there. Okay, you're going to go in the next hole. Whoopsie. That's going to happen all the time. I'm trying to have it so you can see. You're going to go in the next hole. With Terra Skin, if you mark the holes, you don't even need to pre-punch them. But you might as well do it consistent. Okay, so you should be able to see the thread there. Okay, now you're going to go in the next hole. I mean, how easy is this? Go in the next hole. And I know what you're saying, but you've got this piece of thread hanging on the outside. What are you going to do with it? I will show you. I will show you. Okay. And go into the next one. Whoopsie. This happens all the time. There we go. So I've got my first signature stitched. When you're pulling, don't just pull up like this, because if it's paper-based paper, it'll tear. I like to pull, okay, along the spine, because it make it nice and tense. Okay, fold that. Going to add to the top. So you're going to take your next piece, you're going to go on top. Okay, now this is where you kind of have to be a little bit creative with your fingers. I'm going to kind of put my fingers in here just so I can kind of hold it. So your last hole here, which is called a sewing station, okay, I'm going to go into the hole right here. Okay, I'm going to go into the hole. So basically I'm repeating everything I just did. I'm just going now the other way. And this is what attaches the two together. And you're basically just repeating. Now this book is actually relatively small. If you had a lot of pages to it, I would actually, it's another more complicated stitch, is that you would actually bring the stitch down and up and down and up. But what I'm going to do is at the end, I will show you a really neat technique that you can do to kind of finish it off. And I'm just going to use some copper tape. Oopsie, see what happens? A little bit of a tangle. Okay. Pull that tight. And you're going to go in the last hole. So this is just basically to show you the stitch. Now, okay, so these two together, you're going to tie them in a regular square knot. Making sure they're nice and tight. And because the thread is waxed, it actually stays put. There. So now you have your signatures bound, and they hold, they open up flat. Okay? Now this is, and basically you would just repeat that. Because you've got the middle part, which has no stitch, there is another stitch that I can show you, but it's more complicated. It's a bit more too complicated for this, but basically you would be going in and out through these ones here. But right now, let's just leave it where you're going to do a stitch across this way, this way, this way, this way, okay? What you can do is you can take some ribbon and you can actually feed it through the thread like so, and glue it to your journal, which will make it sturdy. How easy is that? No complicated stitch. You can just do that. What's kind of pretty is I found this copper tape, which is nice. It's a little skinny, okay, but it's a nice adhesive copper tape, and I could use the copper tape through here. Okay, you could also do the same thing with cording. Now there's another video that I'll be doing much later where you actually stitch around the cording, but you could actually do the same thing with the cording, and you can cut multiple cords around there. The whole thing is just glue it. Okay, there's also white ribbon. That's a bit big, but you can also measure the holes to fit around there. So that's just a really quick and easy way to do that. Now I'm probably going to use the green ribbon, or I'll use the copper thread. All right, so now I'm just going to continue on and do the rest of the signatures. Adding to the top in the first hole. Like I said, there are a whole bunch of different, ouch! Aha! This is why I don't like using these binders, bookbinding needles. I like using my curved ones. There are a whole bunch of different stitches that you can use, and all, you know, artists will have their own way of doing it. You just do what is easier for you. I mean, if you don't even want to stitch it, staple it. And I'm going to do all my tightening at the end. Clean your table off first before you start this. Don't be like me and be lazy. Okay, so all you're doing is going in and out, in and out. Now when I'm doing this, oh look, I went through here. Normally I hold everything in my hands, but it'll be hard for video for you to see it. I want to try to make this as simple as possible for you to see, but typically what I would do is I hold it like this. Okay, so I usually have like that. Okay, but it's floppy, so you're probably not going to be able to see. You'll find your own way of holding it. It'll be comfortable for you. Okay, so you notice I'm not pulling it like this. I'm pulling it to follow along the spine. And I usually take my glasses off to do this because I can't see. But I have to keep my glasses on so I can see the monitor, so I can try my best to make sure that I'm always in camera view. Now this stitch is going to be a little bit different because we don't have a tail to tie onto. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this nice and tight. Okay, make sure I don't have any loose threads. Okay, what I'm going to do is so I've come out here, I'm going to go underneath. Okay, I just went through that stitch. Okay, Then I'm going to go through the hole. And all you're doing is creating a knot. That's all you're doing. That's it. But to make it strong, I will do that again. And it does help though if you're using waxed thread. It just makes it a little bit more sturdy. If you happen to be able to find Elmer's braiding cord, that's really good. I mean, it's in the children's section of the store, but it is quite sturdy. There you go. So you see the stitch for each signature, but isn't it cool that it actually is flat? And now I'll take the next signature, I'll put it on top, and repeat. Okay, go out. And go in. This was actually the very first stitch that I used. You know what I used to use? I used to sew my signatures with my sewing machine. Like I would stitch right through. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's, it's kind of feels different when you're, working in a journal that you've made from hand, like you have actually stitched it by hand. But if you want to use your sewing machine, go right ahead. Hopefully I am not getting too far out of camera view. Okay, hold that one nice and tight. Okay, so see how it's really loose here? We need to tighten that one up. Okay. Need to tighten that up a little bit. Oh, chaos is here. Kitty cat, kitty cat, kitty cat. All right, and then now I'm going to do the same thing now. So now we have to loop under this one here. Now, usually I turn this, but I'm going to keep it the same way. So now you're going to feed through here. All you're doing is creating a knot. Okay, and go through the hole. Whoopsie. Can you hear the paper moving? She's found a piece of, there's this piece of gift wrap paper I left on the floor. She likes to play with it. Okay, and pull it nice and tight. And I'm going to repeat it again. Okay, and through the hole. Hi, chaos. Okay, and just gently wiggle back and forth, which makes the knot nice and sturdy. Next one on top. At this point now, you guys probably have a very good idea what to do, but I'm just going to continue on with this, so you can, fast forward the video or just keep watching. That didn't work. It went right through. Did it again. Did I actually? Whoopsie. See, I just punched through a different hole, so this wasn't lined up. Let's try this again. There we go. With the Terra Skin, it's kind of hard. It's not that it's kind of hard. Because it's not paper-based, it's made from stone. The minute you get the needle and you just poke a hole, and it creates a little bit of an indentation. So with the Terra Skin, you kind of have to work a little bit slower. Making sure it's always tight as you go. And I will create another video to show different stitches. Actually, I won't create a video to show different stitches. I will create more videos to create additional stitches. There's unfortunately only so many hours in the day. But you know what? What a great way of creating something so you can create studies. I mean, if you're learning a new technique, why not keep it in a book instead of using a canvas? You know, think of this is oh, I'm too busy talking and not paying attention. Think of how many canvases I would have to use to get this many pages. I'll see what happens. I didn't thread it properly. Hang on, let me do this again. Okay, we'll wet the thread. I can't talk and stitch at the same time. And put the needle over the thread. There we go. So now, what I was saying, if I was to have to use 5x7 canvases, I usually like 8x10. So my journal pages are usually about 8x10 because I use bigger pieces. But this is a 5x7. You know, look how thick it is. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 painting surfaces per signature. So think of, you've got 6 signatures. It's all two-sided. Do you know how many canvases you would have to buy to equal that many surfaces to paint on? I just find that it's also, especially for studies, it's a lot more manageable when you're doing it in a journal. I have got hundreds and hundreds of canvases and canvas boards in my closet because I won't throw them out because I like seeing a timeline of my artwork. Go through the stitch from before. Create that hole and go through. And this one should be snug but not over tight. And what I also do, depending if this journal is on paper that I've reclaimed, like newspapers, if I'm making a journal out of newspaper and stuff like that, I'll actually put a little dab of glue on here. And now our last one. If you're using a tapestry needle, which is dull on the end, you can actually keep your finger behind here to feel the needle. I've already poked myself a few times. Okay. And, I'm not a professional bookbinder, so I'm probably breaking a gazillion rules in doing this, but you know what? I don't believe in rules. I believe in rules when it comes to chemicals, like you can't take acrylic paint and put it on top of oil paint because it'll affect your physical painting. But other stuff like technique and stuff, unless, like same thing, like if my stuff is not you know, museum quality and stuff. Well, then, you know what, if my paintings were to last 100 years and it starts to fade and crack, well, then, you know what, that keeps the museum conservators in business. This is just for studies, okay? So we don't have to worry about it being perfect. Also, it is beautiful, though. It is beautiful. But don't get yourself all stressed out. And, oh my God, you will need to practice, practice, practice. Okay, I'm going to turn this a little bit now because it's the final stitch. You will have to practice. So don't think you're going to get it perfect on the first shot. Whoopsie. I pulled that too. Okay, so through here. And I'm just going to wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And I'm sure that probably could have got a bit better quality for filming if I didn't have to film and do this and watch the monitor and be careful that kitty cat doesn't knock over my coffee and blah 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 all by myself. Okay. And you know what? We'll do one more for good measure. Okay, so with this tail that we have left over, we can trim it, or if you want, you can kind of let it dangle and you can put a little charm on there if you want. Okay, I'm just gonna trim it. There's no better proof than a hand-bound journal when you actually see the binding. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Now I will, like I said before, I will do a video where you actually have the stitches in between here where, because right now they're not bound in the middle. Okay, so this is now where we're going to take our ribbon and we're going to wrap it around. Okay, I changed my mind. I was going to do the actual wrap around with the ribbon. I want to do it with the copper tape. Now I've never used this before, so it'll be kind of interesting. Now because it is shiny, when I actually come to paint this, it will repel the ink or the paint. But what I'm probably going to do is I may use this as my Fontaholic journal. And I'm extra careful when I'm working with a blade because I'm very, very clumsy with a blade. Oh, chaos. She's being difficult. There we go. Alright, so it comes, it's like just like tape. That's all it is. Okay. Get a clean edge there. So now I can feed this through here. Okay. And then tape it around like so. I can put one. Now, the nice thing about this is that it actually holds the shape. I can put one or I can put two. I'm probably going to put two right underneath the threading. And I'm probably going to be in the way. I'm just feeding it underneath. And yes, this would have been easier to do while I was doing the actual stitching. Okay, so it's going to feed it through all the threads. Now, practice doing it the way that I showed you on just scrap pieces of paper. Okay, when you actually come to do the binding, you can actually have the ribbon on and then stitch right over the ribbon. It'll just be easier than doing it this way. Okay, so I just fed my palette knife underneath just to lift it up a little bit. And there we go. It's just kind of difficult for the first one, but again, you could do this while you're doing your stitching. Okay, like that. So I'll just cut that. Okay, I'm not going to pull the adhesive off yet. And I can do two. And I want to measure that. Again, if it's off, I don't care. It's not the end of the world. I'm not entering this into some type of art show. Okay. So now to get this through here, I can try feeding it through this way, but it's so much easier if I just turn this around. Just take my palette knife, and I'm using the palette knife with the rounded corner, and just gently lift it through and feed it through like that. This way I'm not committed to a ribbon ahead of time, and you know what? It's cumbersome when doing the binding when you're working around the ribbon. And this one here, I should be able to feed this through. But you know what? Everybody does it their own way. This is just what works for me. There. How nice is that? Now, just a matter now of just pulling off the adhesive and gluing it down. So for the adhesive, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it forward, this one, okay, and pull, pull, pull. And then just grab it here. Okay. Let me see if I can leave that standing up. And the copper tape, I mean, it's not terribly expensive, but it is a bit more difficult when working it this way because I don't want to waste it. Okay, have these kind of relatively even. Okay, pull tight and wrap down. Pull tight and wrap down. And then we'll burnish it after. Oh, that's a little bit uneven, but you know what, that's fine. Okay. And that big sigh was not from tiredness, it's just of doing this. I have a short nail there and it's getting sore. Okay, so peel. Peel, okay. Pull. And if you want to use ribbon, other than, you know, peeling a backing, all you're going to do is glue the ribbon down. Oh, come on. I also don't like to edit all this stuff, extra tedious stuff out of my videos because I like you guys to see how I handle it if I have problems. Like now. There we go. Okay. Nice and even. Nice and even. Down. Push. Down. Push. Then I'm just going to take my bone folder and not too hard. I'm just going to burnish the copper tape into the journal. Now, myself, because this was a demo, I would have done this step after my covers have been painted. But in saying that, acrylic paint on this will repel, so you just wipe it off with a paper towel. And there we go. How beautiful is that? So now you have a journal that's 5x7 in size that will open up completely flat. There you go. So this is just one little demonstration on how to do a really easy running stitch to bind some pages together to create yourself an easy journal. So join me for my next set of videos, and as always, stay inspired.